So early October, and time to go and have a look at a lot of the Crataegus or hawthorn species which we've got growing in the garden here. Our hedgerows at the moment are full of the berries which are orange or orange-red on the hawthorn plants adorning the hedges, and it's a bit early in the year for the birds to attack them. But we've got one or two extraordinary new Crataegus which have exceptional fruits. And this is one this is Crataegus schraderiana. It comes from Greece and a little bit into the Balkans. And it has a fairly hawthorn-shaped leaf, but the berries are the size of cherries. They're squishy, and I'm going to try and taste one. It's actually quite sweet and really quite nice. But just imagine this in your garden. It's a small that's been in the ground here for about 8 or 10 years. First time it flowered this year, and the first time it set proper berries. And just look at the crop is weighing down each branch. I'm sure you could make jam out of them. I'm sure the birds will eat them, but they're going to be a bit of a tall order for a thrush to get into its beak, because they're really quite large berries. But for a first time fruiting on a Crataegus schraderiana, I think that's really quite something. It's in the Bernkoos catalogue now, and something for those of you who are prepared to try and dabble in something a bit more unusual, well worth the dabble. Here's another Crataegus species. Some of these species names are quite a mouthful. This is ellwangeriana, fireball, and some of the berries have dropped onto the ground, as you can see, but there are still a few left on the tree, and they are really rich, rounded red, and they too, I'm sure, would be perfectly edible. This species doesn't have any prickles, which is quite a big plus, and this is only the second time after about 8 years that it's produced a good show of fruit. And I think that's probably because of the very hot weather we had in May and June, which encouraged a good flowering, and the flowers got pollinated, and here we've got a nice display of fruit. And a third Crataegus species, but this one has got really enormous great prickles, but the fruits are in clusters. This is Crataegus combyi, which has only been in the ground here for 5 years, and this is its first fruiting. So very different, much smaller berries and in bigger clusters than the other two species we've looked at. And finally, a fourth species of Crataegus or hawthorn. This is Crataegus aprica, and it has rather more conventional shaped and coloured fruits. They're just starting to go a bit orangey, but I don't think they're going to go fully red. They're not as ripe as the others. These are still very hard, these berries, and the leaf is still fully on the tree. But it's had a good crop, and again, an interesting plant to add a feature in early autumn to the garden, something a bit different. And if you grew all these 4 species of Crataegus together, I think you'd have an interesting display for the birds and an interesting display to colour up the garden. There are 40 or 50 different species of Crataegus from Mexico, Africa, the Mediterranean and China, so all around the world, but not all of them have spectacular fruits, but the 4 I've shown you certainly do.